go to Mike McAllister, and I want to lead with this question to both of you today. In the era of NIL, and we were talking about Rick Pitino and how great of a coach he is, but there are people donating money for that school to win tournament games and paying a particular player, the player of the year in the ACC, Big East, RJ Lewis Jr. To play. At what point is there going to be, like, I keep saying NIL is not sustainable because there's no return on investment. How would you feel if you paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that kid and now he's not playing in the last 2 minutes of a tournament game you could win? Mike McAllister, I lead you with that question.
Well, first of all, I would have an issue with anyone that wants Pauly to transfer out.
Well, thank you.
Let's start with that. But anyway, to your point, there's a fine line between the influence that you have when you give money to help get good players and that influence dictating how coaches coach. Because at the end of the day, part of your support of an athletics department is also entrusting that they're going to have the funds to attract the best coaches or, a really good coach that can help you win games. If you're doing that, but then not allowing that coach to coach, and Rick Pitino has a long history of being very successful in the NCAA tournament and being a great coach and all of that, then at what point why even have a coach at that point, right? Like, just throw the guy that throws the most money at the program out on the bench and say, you play who you want since you're the one spending the money. So there is a fine line there. I'm sure that someone who is spending money and sees that could be upset. But at the same time, it's not like the guy was 12 for 17 shooting, right? He was 3 for 17, wasn't playing well at all, didn't seem to be playing within their team concept, kind of seemed to be going out on his own a little bit. So there's justification for why he wouldn't play in the final few minutes based on how he was playing in that game. But that's certainly going to be something that programs are going to have to deal with behind the scenes, because there's going to be a booster somewhere who's going to be upset when that happens and say, I didn't give you all this money to get this player for him to sit on the bench. And there's going to be a conflict there between how much does an administration cave into that so they can keep the money coming, or how much do they say that's the coach's decision, and if you don't like it, I don't know what to tell you. And then you get someone that decides to take their money elsewhere.
Well, that's my biggest question. I wasn't questioning whether they should be coaching or not. If you were a big money donor, when next year rolls around, aren't you going to be less likely to want to give money if in that situation?
I can only speak on it from my perspective. My thought is, if I like the coach and I think the coach is a good coach, then I'm going to trust his judgment on a lot of those things. My job is to help him get as many good players as possible, and then it's his job to coach them up and put them in position to win tournament games. If I don't like the coach, then I'm certainly going to use my influence to say, this is why I don't like the coach, and if you want me to continue donating money, we need to look to someone who is going to make better decisions.
Did it feel like to anybody else that the coach, in this case Rick Pitino, was sending a message and not so much like...
I texted that to you and Jordan. I go, is he really sending a message right now?
That's what it felt like to me, Mike, and I know you laid out what his numbers were in 3 for 17 and obviously did not play well. I think we got to keep in mind that he got subbed out with 4:56 to go. He had just made 2 free throws to cut it to 2. It was 64-62. Kadari Richmond had already fouled out. He was out of the game, and they could not make a shot collectively. And the best player in the conference, you sat him on the bench for the last 5 minutes. I thought that it felt like he was sending a message opposed to... And again, I'm not saying he wasn't trying to win the game. Of course he was trying to win the game. But it felt like, and I saw somebody say this on social media, and I thought it was spot on. It was kind of like Gene Hackman in Hoosiers, when the guy fouls out, and then the guy on the bench starts to go in. He's like, no, where are you going? Sit down. My team's on the court, and I'm going to play with 4. It almost felt like that the last 5 minutes, that it was like, we're going to go down with the guys on the court. I'm not putting him back in the game.
Yeah, I don't know what message that would send.
Right? I agree. It to me, it made 0 sense. Yeah. And, and I know that he was 3 for 17, and, my son and I had them in a survivor pool, so we were very invested, and we're like, why in the world are they not putting him back in the... To me, it made 0 sense.
I'm sorry I did
There has
this.
to be something going on that we're not aware of. Something like there was a discussion in a huddle, we're going to do this, and
Right, he didn't do it.
said,
Right.
no, I'm shooting.
Yeah.
And then Pitino was like, no, you're going to do what I say. And there was a conflict, and Pitino basically said, all right, I'm going to show you who's really in charge here. You're sitting the rest of the game. Barring something like that, I agree with you. It makes no sense. But I'm not sure we'll ever find out about that unless the player decides that he wants to come out and say something, because it was very clear from the post-game press conference that Pitino was not going there.
I'm sorry I did this. We got the portal guy on, and I'm talking about Rick Pitino.
It's okay. It's fine.
Mike, anything shocking out of the 4 departures for Syracuse to you?
None whatsoever. Everything pretty well expected to this point. I think we're still kind of waiting to see whether or not, Donnie Freeman or J.J. Starling or something like that enters the portal. I think most people expect J.J. to be back. I think the fact that we didn't hear anything about Donnie throughout last week is a positive sign, and the fact that we're midway through the day on the first day the portal opens and he's not in there is a good sign. So, we'll wait and see. Hopefully, I think it would make everyone feel better if they made formal announcements like, hey, guys, I'm coming back, just FYI, so there's no confusion. The longer it goes without that, then I think the more on edge fans are going to be. But either way, the fact that you have guys like Bell and Cuff and Moore leaving, not a huge surprise. I think most that were, plugged into things kind of expected that those were the most likely names that could decide to head elsewhere.
I said 4 because I'm making the assumption, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Is Chance Westry coming back, or is he gone?
I have no idea. I mean, he's the problem. Okay, so if he enters the portal, who's going to take him is the other part of it. So, I get Syracuse saying, look, we can't rely on you. Who knows if you're ever going to be healthy again? Probably best for you to go into another direction, or we're not saving any NIL money for you. Basically, if you want to come here on scholarship and just take up a roster spot, fine, but you're not getting any NIL money. I could certainly see Syracuse doing something like that, but I don't know who else would take him at this point, given the injury history. But if he comes back to Syracuse, he's going to be, I think, pretty far down in terms of the pecking order, at least going into training camp. Now, certainly, if he all of a sudden plays unbelievably in training camp, he'd have an opportunity to earn playing time that way. But I don't know that anyone can honestly rely on him as far as going into next season. So I don't know. He might be on the roster, he might not. But I guess we'll find out.
What are your expectations in terms of, and I know we've asked you some semblance of this question a few times already, but in terms of what Syracuse wants to get out of the portal now, whether it's certain names or, just types of players, what are you looking for over the course of the next several weeks?
Yeah, they've already had some, reports out there that they've been linked to a few different players, and it looks like they're obviously after a big. That's certainly going to be a big priority, and then they're looking for guards and wings, or kind of the other spots. And the fact that I haven't seen them attached to a bunch of power forwards either also leads me to believe at this juncture that they think they've got at least a good chance of keeping Donnie Freeman, but. Clearly, three-point shooting is a big priority for them as well. Several of the guys that they've been linked to are players that are shooting, 37% from three or above, guys that shoot a lot of threes, et cetera. So it seems that that's something that Alex Klein, as the GM, values, is three-point shooting, and they're certainly trying to improve that weakness from this past season.
One name that popped up that I think Syracuse fans are familiar with is Jalil Bethia, the freshman out of Miami. Is he a name to keep our eye on? He does have some size. He does have talent. They've been linked to him in the past. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly understand keeping an eye on him because of that link in the past. The thing is, his primary recruiter when he was being recruited by Syracuse was Jerry. Jerry obviously is gone. He didn't have a particularly great year at Miami this past season, although he did play well against Syracuse. Most guards did, to be honest with you. But I don't know that I see them as targeting him as like a major priority. I could see them talking to him evaluating, potential fit, or saying, hey, if you come in, maybe play in a reserve role for a year or two and then compete for a starting spot. But not a name as of right now that I'm anticipating is going to be a top priority for them.
When do you think we'll have an answer one way or the other on Donnie? Do you have a feel for that? I know a lot of it's speculation, but do you have a feel on how soon we would know?
I don't. I'm hoping, I think for everyone's sanity, that it'll be at some point this week, but I don't have any information on a definitive or, even a gut feeling on a time frame. It's, they've been keeping everything very close to the vest, he and his family, and I anticipate that that'll continue. Maybe stuff will start to get leaked out once, they're ready for it to be known at that point, but also wouldn't surprise me if all of a sudden one day there was just a post on his Instagram account that said, I'm coming back, So don't have a definitive answer for you, but I'm hoping for everyone's sanity at some time this week. Of course, he could also elect to just say, if I'm coming back, I don't need to announce anything and just not ever announce anything and drive everyone crazy. That could happen too.
God forbid he tweets an emoji or Instagrams an emoji. I can't do this again. I can't. Just say I'm coming back or I'm leaving. Rip the Band-Aid.
If I was in his shoes, I would do the random emojis and random days just to mess with people on a daily. Just random emojis that mean absolutely nothing to see how much people will read into it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would do the wind emoji because people would be like, "Oh, he's leaving. He's blowing like the wind."
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Big eyes emoji.
Yeah, the eyeball emojis. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a football question before we go? Go ahead.
I got one more basketball question. The JUCO rule. Do you think there's any chance that McLeod comes back as like a third option at center, or any option at center with that JUCO rule?
I don't think so, but I never rule anything out. Now, the JUCO rule, there are some specifics that it's not just a blanket, everyone qualifies for this. So I don't know his situation enough to know whether or not he does qualify for that. But if he does, if he's comfortable being a reserve big as he was this past year, then if I'm Syracuse, if you get a big out of the portal and you've got Mastorovich, and if you get Freeman back, then having McLeod as, a rotational big that can play 5 to 10 minutes when you need it here and there, I think it makes a ton of sense for Syracuse. Whether or not that's what he wants if he has another year of eligibility, or whether he wants to go somewhere where he thinks he can play 20-plus minutes a game, that's up for him to decide. But from a Syracuse perspective, I think it would make a ton of sense to have him come back and play that similar role.
All right, I want to ask you a football question. This stuff that's going on with Syracuse and Colorado, and they've put the proper paperwork in, and we know it's against the rules right now. Do you think this is actually going to happen this year, where they have a joint practice and play a spring game out in Boulder?
I do think there's a chance. Now, the problem is it's in the hands of the NCAA.
Right.
And the NCAA, which is only job is to govern, is terrible at governing. So are they likely to make a decision that seems like a slam dunk, no-brainer, get some hype around the sport and, perhaps change things around and save the spring game and make this a fun thing with who are we going to, partner with this year and all those types of things? I don't have much confidence that they would make an easy slam dunk decision, as it seems like in the past they've messed those things up. But I do think that there is a possibility. I know both Syracuse and Colorado are, talking to the NCAA and trying to do everything they can to make it happen. So it wouldn't surprise me if it does. But, again, I'm not going to count on the NCAA making a good decision.
Yeah, they could just wait until it's too late for everybody involved and kind of punt on the decision until next year.
Would that surprise anyone?
No, it wouldn't. Yeah. No. I mean, it was kind of like with Kyle McCord, right? It was
yeah.
wait, and then he made his own decision, and the NCAA didn't have to decide.
It also sounds expensive.
To go out to Boulder?
Yeah, for a team to have to pay to go practice. I would not be a fan of that.
Good advertising, though.
Yeah.
For the program. All right, we'll take a timeout. Mike, as always, appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll wrap up hour number 1 next. Then Tim Leonard kicks off hour number 2 back after this on ESPN Radio.